It is.
Hello and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Colorado, our annual Making Democracy Work. And I'm Chris Humphrey, co-director of the Voter Service on the state board, and I thank you all for being here with us tonight to discuss it. Because to me, making democracy work and 2022 ballots are very important to me. So let's get out, roll up our sleeves, and let's get started. And we know what we need to do, so let's put it to work and get it going.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Chris, great.
Okay, and then we hear from our three partners, Ruben Gutierrez at the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform, and we will talk with him about the voting for those incarcerated. And also we're going to hear from Jonathan McMillan, who will tell us about the Colorado new Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And also we're going to hear from Ashley Williams, the power of the polls will discuss recruiting poll workers. And then we'll wrap up our forecast for the 2023 legislative session. So I'll turn it over to, who do I turn it over to? Okay, Beth, let's hear from Beth, our director.
Great, thanks, Chris. Now we'll get it started with our legislative liaison, Andrea Wilkins, and our co-directors of Action and Advocacy, Maud Nerrill and Kathy Wilson. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a few slides to share with you tonight, so bear with me for just 1 second while I get that set up. All right, hopefully you are all seeing the slides. It means that I can no longer fully see all of you. So if anyone needs anything along the way, you'll probably have to yell at me. Which is perfectly fine. But we're going to go through and have a discussion of the various ballot measures that you'll see on your ballots when you go to vote this November. As usual, there's several of them. So we're going to be talking you through those. We do ask that you save questions for the end. We think it'll be a little more streamlined that way. We've got a lot of great information to get through tonight, but we do want to place a high priority on taking questions and having as much discussion as time will allow tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Since 1936, the League of Women Voters of Colorado has regularly published explanations and pro and con arguments on each of the ballot issues in every statewide election. These arguments are available online at vote411.org, at www.lwvcolorado.org, and in our printed materials that are available from the State League. It needs to be understood that the pro and con arguments published by the League are not opinions or endorsements of the League. Rather, they're arguments from the individuals and groups that support or oppose each issue. We encourage you to study these opinions before casting your ballot. Further detail on the ballot measures can be found in the Legislative Council's analysis, which is commonly referred to as the Blue Book, and it is mailed to all active registered households. Information about judges can also be found in the Blue Book too. I know I just received mine the other day, so hopefully you all are starting to see those roll in as well. All right, on to the ballot issues. The ballot issues that you'll see appear this November are either referendums or initiatives. The referendums have been referred to the voters by the Colorado legislature, having received the vote of at least a majority of the members of each house of the Colorado General Assembly in the case of statutory changes, and at least 2/3 of the members of each house in the case of constitutional amendments. Since 1910, Coloradans have had the right to place a citizens initiative on the ballot. For a proposed ballot measure to make the ballot by petition, the signature requirement is 5% of the total votes cast in the last election for Secretary of State. So for this year's ballot, petitioners need over 124,632 signatures of registered Colorado voters to qualify. Most petitioning groups will get substantially more signatures just to ensure that they do have the required number to qualify. Ballot measures can either be amendments or propositions, and you'll see both this election cycle. Amendments are changes to the Colorado Constitution and may only be changed by a later voter-approved constitutional amendment. You should be aware that ballot issues changing the Constitution are long-lasting and do frequently impact the General Assembly. So it's a significant thing that's put to the voters when we're contemplating a constitutional change. All amendments on the ballot are constitutional proposals, and that means that in the future, if we want to see a change, it's the voters that has to go back and change it. The General Assembly does not have the power to do that. Propositions are approved by voters to bring changes to Colorado statutes. The propositions may be subsequently modified by legislative action. So that's a very key difference between the two types of measures that you'll see appear on the ballot. I do want to mention a specific note in relation to the vote threshold for constitutional amendments and propositions. In 2016, I think many of you will recall, voters approved a measure that constitutional measures were required to receive 55% of the votes to pass. And on the 2022 ballot, those measures needing that 55% threshold are amendments D, E, and F. Propositions, however, only need a simple majority to pass. So we're looking for something beyond that 50% threshold. There are 8 propositions on the ballot this election cycle. 2 have come referred through the legislature, those being Proposition FF and GG, and 5 are citizens initiatives, and those include Propositions 121 through 126. One easy way to organize your thoughts around the ballot issues is to remember that those with letters at the alphabet come from the legislature, those with numbers are citizens initiatives. It's a lot to keep straight, and all of the, the language can kind of get a little muddled. So that's sort of a key for keeping those two types straight in our minds. And let's see, with that, oh, I'm one slide ahead. With that, let's go ahead and pause for just a moment to kind of review that. I know that's a lot of information coming at people, a lot of technical details, but the differences are important in our understanding of how things came to be on the ballot and the functions that they'll have. So just to review, referendums are ballot issues that have been referred by the voters, referred to the voters by the Colorado legislature. Initiatives are ballot issues that have been referred to the voters by petition. Amendments are changes to the Colorado Constitution and may only be changed at a later date through another voter-approved constitutional amendment. And propositions are changes to Colorado statute, and those are subject to change by a future General Assembly. And with that, let's go ahead and move on to discussion of the amendments themselves. To start with, we're going to be taking a look at Amendment D in regard to judges for the new 23rd Judicial District. This is a referred amendment from the legislature amending the Colorado Constitution to provide a process for appointing judges to the new 23rd Judicial District. Major provisions of this measure include the ability for the governor to appoint district judges from the current 18th Judicial District to the new 23rd Judicial District. The measure also allows appointed judges who were elected to or retained in the November 2024 election for the 18th Judicial District to finish their terms in the 23rd JD. And it requires that the appointed judges reside in the 23rd JD by January 7th, 2025. The 18th Judicial District was drawn more than 50 years ago and now has a population of more than 1 million people, which is almost 20% of the population of Colorado. In 2020, the Colorado legislature split the 18th Judicial District, which is comprised of Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. So in 2025, the 18th Judicial District would contain only Arapahoe County, and the new 23rd Judicial District would be comprised of Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. Under the state constitution, the state is divided into judicial districts consisting of one or more counties. District courts in these judicial districts hear both civil and criminal court cases, including felony criminal cases, family law matters, probate matters, and behavioral health cases. The state legislature may change the boundaries of the judicial district or increase or reduce the number of judicial districts. And there have been 22 judicial districts in Colorado since 1964. And that brings us to Amendment E, and I'm going to hand off to Kathy and Maude for some additional discussion.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Maude Nerol. And Amendment E extends the homestead exemption to Gold Star spouses. This is a referred amendment from the legislature to the Colorado Constitution to extend the Homestead Exemption Act. Major provisions: it allows a property tax exemption to the surviving spouse of a service member who died in the line of duty or of a veteran who died from a service-related disease or injury. Colorado's Constitution provides for a homestead exemption to homeowners who meet certain requirements by reducing the property tax on the property of one's primary residence. Qualifying homeowners include those 65 years of age who have lived in their home for 10 years or more. Veterans with a permanent service-connected disability also qualify. If a homeowner is eligible for both the 65 years of age exemption and also the disability exemption, they may not claim both exemptions. And now I'm going to turn it back to Andrea.
Thanks, Maude. All right, that brings us to Amendment F, changes to charitable gaming organizations. This is a referred proposal from the legislature to amend the Colorado Constitution to allow revisions to the charitable gaming activities that are permissible in Colorado. Some of the major provisions of this initiative include a reduction in the required period of existence for a charitable organization to obtain a bingo or raffle license from 5 years down to 3 years. And the measure would allow, but doesn't require, a member of a nonprofit charitable organization to receive compensation up to the minimum wage for managing a bingo or raffle game. The initiative would repeal the constitutional restriction on compensation beginning July 1st, 2024. Since the early days of our state, regulations regarding gambling and charitable gaming have been found in the Colorado Constitution. And currently, the state constitution allows an organization which has operated continuously in the state for 5 years to apply for a bingo or raffle license, and prohibits organizations from paying workers for those charitable gaming activities. The legislature doesn't have the authority to change the Constitution, so voters have to make any changes that they want to see here. Chartered branches eligible to receive a bingo or raffle license include a whole host of entities, including lodges, chapters of national or state organizations, religious, charitable, labor, fraternal, educational, voluntary firefighters or veterans organizations, political parties, and the Colorado State Fair Authority. This proposal would give the legislature the authority to make any future changes beginning in 2025. And I do want to note in regard to the amendments we've just discussed, D, E, and F, they are all constitutional amendments. So as we discussed earlier, they do need to pass by a vote of 55%. And with that, we will move on to Proposition FF.
Hi, I'm Kathy Wilson, and I'm going to be discussing Proposition FF, Healthy Meals for All. This is a referred proposal from the legislature to amend the statutes to provide meals for all public school students in Colorado. It has two major provisions. The first creates a program that provides a free, healthy breakfasts and lunches for all public school students in Colorado where participating school food authorities or SFAs serve and participate in a national school lunch program or a national school breakfast program. The second provision is that it funds the program by increasing taxes on households who earn more than $300,000, and it also gets federal funds designated for school meals. At present, school meals are paid for with state and federal funds plus payments from families according to the student's family income. The measure pays for the program by increasing taxes on households with more than $300,000 in federal adjusted gross income per year by limiting the amount of money they can deduct from their Colorado tax income. These households will be limited to to state income tax deductions of $12,000 for single filers and $16,000 for joint filers. This is estimated to affect about 114,000 returns, or about 5% of the returns filed in Colorado. It also requires that the state and school meal providers to participate in certain federal programs to bring in additional federal funds. The Healthy School Meals for All program would begin in the 2023-24 school year and would provide free breakfast and lunches for all students in public schools. This includes early childhood programs administered by public schools. More than 60,000 students cannot afford or do not qualify for free or reduced lunch meals. When federal monies provide free meals to all students during the pandemic, many Colorado school districts saw an increase from 20% to 40% increase in participation in the school meal program. Now we're going to be going to Maud, who will be talking about Proposition GG.
Thank you, Kathy. Proposition GG would add a tax table to petitions and ballots. This is a referred statute from the legislature to add a tax table to citizen initiative petitions and to the ballot. Major provision is adding the tax table to citizen initiative petitions and to the ballot for proposals that increase or decrease the state income tax, and requires that a fiscal impact statement be added in the ballot title. Currently, this information is found in the Blue Book, the ballot information booklet, I guess, more formally. There is no current requirement that this information be placed on petitions for initiatives or on the ballot. For any citizen-initiated tax proposal that appears on the ballot, this measure would require a tax information table to appear on the ballot and on the petitions as they're being circulated. The table must list the average change in taxes owed for taxpayers in 8 specific income categories. To place a citizen-initiated proposal on the ballot that affects government revenue, several requirements must be met, including specific language requirements and a fiscal impact statement. Currently, tax tables are included in the legal analysis sent to the voters in the Blue Book. Check the Blue Book, page 33, under Proposition 121 for a complete example. The citizen initiative has been allowed under the Colorado Constitution and state law for over 100 years. To place a measure on the statewide ballot, proponents must collect a certain number of valid signatures from registered voters across the state on a petition. Under current law, petitions include the ballot language and a summary of the fiscal impact of the measure. A number of other requirements must also be met. Next. And next we'll go to Proposition 121 that we just mentioned. It's tax table in the blue book. So proposition, back one, please, Andrea, 121. Thank you. That's fine. Proposition 121, income tax rate reduction. This proposed statute would lower the income tax rate for all Colorado taxpayers. Major provision, it amends Colorado statutes to permanently reduce both the individual and corporate income tax rate from 4.55% to 4.40%. Proposition 121 would amend Colorado statutes to permanently reduce both the individual and corporate income tax rates from 4.55% to 4.40% for all Coloradans. It would reduce state tax collections about $412.6 million in fiscal year 23-24. So the following fiscal year that starts July 1st next year. A reduction of 2.4% in the general fund budget. The state income tax is the main source of general fund revenue. This revenue pays for the general operations of state government, such as education, corrections, and human services. In fiscal year 2021, the state income tax revenue was $10.7 billion, accounting for 68.4% of general fund revenue, i.e. more than 2/3 of the general fund. In addition to general fund revenue, the state budget also includes money from federal funds and other taxes and fees. During years when the state collects money over the Tabor limit, Proposition 121 will reduce the amount of money returned to taxpayers and will not change the amount of money available to pay for state operations. During years when the state collects less than the limit, Proposition 121 will reduce the amount of money available for state government operations. The state currently expects to return money collected above the Tabor limit through at least budget year 2023 to 2024. And now I'm going to turn it back to Andrea.
All right, thank you, Maude. We're going to take a look now at Proposition 122, access to natural psychedelic substances. There is a lot going on in this one. This is a proposed statute that would legalize the use of certain psychedelic substances for medicinal purposes. Some of the major provisions here are that it would allow regulated access to natural psychedelic medicines for adults 21 years and older that show promise in treating mental health conditions. It would allow the use of psychedelic mushrooms at licensed facilities. It creates a regulated therapy system so that adults could access natural psychedelic therapy in licensed healing centers. And it develops and promotes public education about the use of natural medicines. In addition, this measure would remove criminal penalties for personal use and possession of these substances for those that are 21 years and older. And it establishes a natural medicine advisory board. And it's also important to note that sale of psychedelic drugs for recreational use would be prohibited. So the purpose of the Natural Medicine Health Act of 2022 is to establish a new approach to natural medicines when other remedies don't work. Daily medications, therapy, and other coping mechanisms do help many people that are experiencing behavioral health issues, but for some, these tools are not working. An extensive and growing body of research at institutions like Johns Hopkins, UCLA, and NYU is indicating that natural medicines combined with psychotherapy can provide effective treatment for depression, anxiety, PTSD, end-of-life stress, and other conditions. The regulatory program that is created here is designed with guardrails to promote safety. Some of the specifics here are there's no retail sales of these medicines. The medicines purchased for facilitated use at healing centers must be used under supervision. Facilitators will be licensed by the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, or DORA. DORA is tasked with setting qualification, education, and training requirements, as well as developing an oversight process, professional responsibility standards, continuing education requirements, and a complaint and disciplinary process. Under the measure, local governments can regulate the time, place, and manner of operation of the licensed facilities. Local governments cannot ban or prohibit licensed facilities, or ban or prohibit the personal use of psychedelic mushrooms or other plant-based psychedelic substances in their communities. So that is Proposition 122. That takes us on to 123.
Thank you, Andrea. Proposition 123 would dedicate state income tax revenue for affordable housing. This proposed statute would set aside existing revenue for affordable housing programs. Major provisions: it dedicates a portion of revenue, 0.1% from existing income tax revenues for affordable housing programs, exempts that money from the state's revenue limits, making a voter-approved change to the Tabor spending limit, and establishes eligible uses for this money. The measure would designate about 2% of existing income tax revenue to housing and makes a voter-approved change to the Tabor spending limit. The measure does not increase taxes. In Tabor refund years, it would reduce the Tabor refund. In years without Tabor refunds, money for housing would come from the general fund. Since 2021, the state has allocated over $1.2 billion of federal money from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, for affordable housing and services that address housing insecurity, lack of affordable and workforce housing, or homelessness. These are one-time funds that will be spent over the next several years, specifically on emergency rental assistance, homeowner credits, homeowner mortgage assistance, tax credits for developers, housing and infrastructure, and other housing solutions, such as manufactured homes. By 2040, the measure is expected to result in $5 billion in total capital that would be leveraged to both create and preserve affordable housing in the state of Colorado. So ARPA, the federal program, has one-time money. This proposition is for continuing funding every year on housing. The measure's funding would be leveraged to both create and preserve affordable housing in the state of Colorado. This would result in combination with existing affordable housing funding in an estimated 10,000 affordable housing units annually and 170,000 units by 2040, eliminating the affordability gap in the state. And now I'm going to turn it back to Kathy.
All right.
For liquor.
Yes, I get to talk about liquor with you. We have three propositions who deal in one way or another with liquor, and the first one is Proposition 124, increase allowable liquor store locations. This is a statutory proposal, and it allows for an increase in the number of retail liquor store licenses. It has two provisions. The first one allows a gradual increase over time in the number of liquor licenses that can be issued by that can be issued to an owner of a retail liquor store for additional locations. Second provision is that it enables an owner of a retail liquor store to hold an unlimited number of retail liquor store licenses on or before January 1st of 2037. Now, under current law, liquor licensed drugstores, defined as grocery stores with a pharmacy that sells beer, wine, and spirits, can hold 8 licenses. This number increases every 5 years until January of 2037, when the owner of a liquor licensed drugstore can hold an unlimited number of licenses. At present, retail liquor stores are limited to 3 locations per licensee, with 4 locations allowed beginning in 2027. This proposed amendment would allow retail liquor stores to hold as many licenses as liquor licensed drugstores. This measure would allow retail liquor stores to apply to the state and local governments to open additional locations on a phased-in schedule with no limit on the number of permissible locations after 2037. Any new locations must be 1,500 feet from an existing liquor store and follow any other requirements. The measure does not impact any grocery or convenience stores that sell only beer and may have an unlimited number of locations. Next, we have Proposition 125. This one is titled Allow Grocery and Convenience Stores to Sell Wine. This statutory proposal would allow the expansion of retail sale of alcohol beverages. It has one provision. That is that it creates a new fermented malt beverage and wine retail license to allow grocery stores, convenience stores, and other businesses that are licensed to sell beer to also sell wine and conduct wine tasting. Some background. In 2016, the legislature made a number of changes to laws regarding the sale of alcohol. The new laws allowed for the sale of full-strength beer in grocery stores and convenience stores. Those stores had previously been allowed to sell 3.2 beer. Additional locations were permitted to sell beer at that time. Current operational restrictions include that they may not sell alcohol to those under 21 years of age. They may not sell alcohol between midnight and 8 a.m. And employees handling alcohol must be 18 years of age and other requirements. This proposal would allow grocery and convenience stores to sell wine in addition to beer. The proposal does not impact the type of alcohol sold by restaurants, bars, and other establishments. All right, the third proposal related to alcohol is Proposition 126, third-party delivery of alcohol beverages. This statutory proposal would allow for a third-party delivery of alcohol beverage that has 2 major provisions. The first is that it allows retailers licensed for the sale of alcohol beverages for on-premises or off-premises consumption to deliver alcohol beverages to its customers through its own employees, through a qualified independent contractor, or through a third-party delivery service that holds a delivery service permit. And the second provision is that it allows permanent takeout and delivery of alcohol from bars and restaurants, which is currently scheduled for repeal in 2025. Now, under current law, liquor licensed businesses that deliver alcohol to their customers must use their own employees who are 21 years of age or older. This measure that you'll be voting on will allow liquor licensed businesses to contract with third-party companies such as grocery and meal delivery services to deliver alcohol to their customers. Liquor stores have been able to deliver alcohol since 1994, wineries since 1997, and deliveries by grocery and convenience stores since 2019, and finally by bars and restaurants since 2020. Individuals who deliver alcohol must be 21 years of age, complete a certificate program, verify the customer's legal age, and refuse delivery if the customer does not provide proof of age or appears intoxicated. That covers, that covers all of our educational portion about the ballot issues that are going to be on our ballot. So now take a deep breath. Imagine yourself at a restaurant when they bring a taste of sorbet to you to clear your palate. Now we're going to be talking about the different ballot issues and the ones that we have stances for and the ones that we do not. Oh, I forgot one section here, looking at my notes. Let me go back. If you want more information. Okay.
Is this right, Kathy?
Yeah, I think that one's right. I think you were ahead of me. Voter registration has several qualifications. So you can qualify to be a Colorado voter if you are a citizen of the United States, if you are 16 years of age and will be 18 years of age or older at the time of the next election. If you've been a Colorado resident for 22 days immediately before the election in which you intend to vote, and are not serving a sentence of confinement or detention for a felony conviction. Okay. Now, this is an important slide for you. If you want more information regarding the election, regarding these ballot issues that we're going to be voting on, please go to Vote 411. This is an important website that you can share with everybody that you know and get more people to be looking at this literally across the country, because they can get up-to-date, accurate information about voting for their own ballot at vote411.org. So please share this information with everybody you know. Okay. Now, I can't stress this enough. Your vote counts. Let me repeat that one. Your vote counts. Tell everybody this, all right? Voter service and polling centers will be open from October 24th to November 8th. You have the option of mailing in your ballot or placing them in a drop box. But remember that all ballots must be received by Tuesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. So don't procrastinate with them. Get your ballots in, okay, so that they can be counted. All right, on to how the league approaches all of the amendments and the propositions that we talked about. We have 11 amendments that are 11 ballot issues on our ballots. the league only has a stance on issues, on ballot issues that we've studied and have background in. We have no positions at all, and therefore no stances on Amendment D, Amendment E, Amendment F, Proposition 22, Proposition 124, Proposition 125, and Proposition 126. So we have no stance on any of these. Please read your blue books and think about how you're going to vote on each of these issues. Okay. So we do have a stance on Proposition FF. And let me get my notes up on that. In addition to the educational benefits that are addressed, Proposition FF speaks to JEDI issues that concern the League. The League of Women Voters believes in equal access to quality education. If a child is experiencing hunger during the school day, they will be hampered in accessing what's being taught. Having sufficient funding for providing healthy school nutrition for all Colorado public school students to learn and to be academically successful will help to provide equity for students across the state. The League of Women Voters advocates for state and local governments to contribute education funding to the extent that their resources permit. And at the same time, adequate federal funds for the establishment and continuation of programs should be available if necessary. Proposition FF, Healthy School Meals for All, would use both federal funds for Colorado students who qualify for the current free lunch program, as well as state funding gained by capping tax deductions for individuals and joint filers earning more than $300,000. Okay. Maud, would you like to talk about Proposition GG?
Yes, but first I would like to say that we all express our thanks and appreciation to the Rudy and Alice Ramsey Foundation for their generous support of the Nonpartisan Ballot Issues Project. This project reaches uncounted numbers of Colorado voters as they determine how to vote on these issues. As many of you know, we print also paper ballot pamphlets that get distributed all around the state. The League, back to Proposition GG, adding a tax table to petitions and ballot titles. The League believes in informed voters. That's why we're doing this tonight. And so therefore we support Proposition GG. Voters deserve to know that if they vote yes on a measure, their taxes will go down by the amount of a fast food meal or a week's groceries or new tires for their car. Yes, during voting time, there is similar information in the Blue Book, but aside from us election nerds, how many people actually dig through the 100+ page Blue Book? And this measure will also give voters information when they're being asked to sign a petition. And then we'll go on to, so we are supporting adding a tax table to petitions and ballot titles. We also support Proposition 123, which would dedicate states a small portion of state income tax revenue for affordable housing. The League of Women Voters believes people's basic need for shelter should be met, and this would help meet that need. Then Proposition 121 We oppose. It would reduce the state's income tax rate permanently. And the league believes that taxes should provide adequate funding for government programs. Currently, we are likely in a Tabor refund year, and this measure would cut Tabor refunds without cutting state spending. But as the Federal Reserve continues to raise interest rates to wring out inflation, we could well tip into recession and revenue fall below the Tabor cap. According to the Blue Book, in non-Tabor refund years, this measure could cut income tax needed for programs, including education, by over $400 million. Tabor refund year or not, most of the benefit will go to the wealthiest. Half of taxpayers would save less than $40. And now I'm turning it over to, oh, no, I'm turning it back to myself, sorry. So of the 11 ballot measures, we support 3. We support healthy meals for all. We support informing voters with adding tax table to petitions and ballot titles. And we support revenue for affordable housing. We oppose Proposition 121, reducing the state income tax rate. And now, thank you all for saving your questions. Do we have any in the chat? Oh, when will the ballot issue pamphlet be available? I think some of them are going to be available today. Spanish is in English, Spanish is next week. Beth will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we'll be discussing this in just a little bit.
Good, 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 good. Any other questions, or have we completely bored you and you're all asleep?
I do, but I was going to use the chat. This is Laura
Okay.
Stevens. Should I just continue?
Just say it, because we don't
Okay.
have anything
All
else in the
right.
chat.
Do we know how much money will be generated in the housing proposal? Ballot issue.
So I believe it's about 100 million a year.
And would that contribute significantly, or I know it's hard to guess maybe or project, but how would we fare with that amount of money?
You mean what could be, what would that buy us?
Yeah, exactly.
So proponents are saying that between that and existing programs,
Okay.
we could build about 10,000 new units a year.
Okay, good.
Oh, Kathy Smith, I'm sorry, Kathy Smith, thank you, 300 million a year for the next couple of years.
All right, 300.
Thank you, Kathy.
And then with the school lunch proposal, ballot issue, keep saying proposal, on that one, if we don't have a tax table yet to know how much those earning 300,000 will give, but will that be enough to cover feeding every child and not encumber many of our districts who are already struggling, especially around hiring and sustaining teachers? We do have a shortage.
From what I've read, the state expenditures from the general fund are estimated to increase by approximately $212,000 for fiscal year 2022 to 23, 105 million in fiscal year 2023 to 24, and between 71.5 million and the 101 million in the 2024-25 I think that what I have read is the combination between the additional funds that would be gained from capping the Colorado income tax deductions for people with $300,000 or more, plus the federal funds that would be
Okay, from the free and
would
reduced.
earn it, would
loans.
cover it, would be
Oh, good,
in good shape. Yes.
good. Okay,
And we
Thank
have
you.
somebody who is commenting there too. It says federal funds will also be used, yeah, to make up the difference.
well,
Right,
that's fine, just so we're not,
right.
yeah, because that's worrisome to everybody.
Yes, I can understand that, but I think that they're in pretty good shape with the way that they
Good.
fashioned this. And when it came from the General Assembly, it definitely was a bipartisan bill that brought it to our, to our ballot.
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Good job.
Other questions? Jill?
Yes, thank you. This was a great presentation. Thanks to all of you. I have a question about the healthy school meals for all.
Mhm.
And I wanted to understand what Kathy mentioned about during the pandemic, the participation went from 20% to 40%. What does that mean? Because my grandson was receiving free meals at his middle school, and my other grandson was receiving a free breakfast at his elementary school. So how was that the increase?
Okay, what happened during the pandemic is the federal government sent money to the schools to pay for the free meals, because people were a lot of people were in dire straits because of what was happening during the pandemic. And that program, the federal government decided not to continue that program.
I know.
Because Congress did not vote for it to continue.
I know.
And that's why Colorado really feels that this is such an important benefit for our children, that they wanted to find a way that they could continue it, and this is their plan for doing so.
Okay, I understand that, but I don't understand the 20% to 40%. Wasn't it 100% then?
Well, no, what it showed was that so many more students were going and were eating all these free meals that were being provided in their schools. So it was a big jump. So they found that it was a really positive program during the pandemic that really helped children. And they wanted the districts to be able to continue this.
Kathy, I think the wording in our script is a little confusing. I don't think that it went from 20% of students participating to 40% participating. I think, but we need to check before we do this again, that the increase in participation was somewhere between 20 and 40%.
And one of the sources too said, let's see if I can find this. And it said Colorado schools serve 1.3 million more school meals in October of 2021 than pre-pandemic in October of 2019, an increase that district officials attribute to the expanded free meals program that was going on then. So it reverted back.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? We've got some other additional information in the chat from Kath Perone.
Correct. That's true.
Other questions?
That's quoted from the Blue Book.
Thank you, Kath.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. We are very pleased to welcome Ruben Gutierrez, who is, I have to find my notes, sorry, 1 second, it's in the chat, the lead canvasser for the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, working under the Civic Engagement Program. The coalition's main aim is to lessen the overuse of the criminal justice system and to improve community health and safety. Ruben, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it. So starting off, pretty much like as the biography stated, just we're dedicated to public safety, the advancement of community health, and the overuse of criminal justice system. As we know, rates have been pretty prevalent with incarceration and things of that nature. So our main aim is to, inform the community, make sure that they're all aware of their eligibility in regards to voting, as many people who are formerly criminally justice related have the eligibility to vote. And so as a lead canvasser, that's kind of my main role. I work under manager Jasmine Ross. She's the she oversees the civic engagement program. And basically under that program, we're trying to have, maximize outreach as far as registering people. So like today, for example, I went to Fort Warren Library, and afterwards I was able to go to a Arapaho halfway house. So, we're going to the halfway houses, jails. We partner with Community Works, just different organizations that are, working alongside improving community. And it's been very successful. We've been able to work hand in hand with Denver Jail and Arapaho jails. And, we go in weekly Saturdays, and we're registering women and men to, vote. And a lot of them, like I said, are misinformed on the facts, especially with parolees. In 2019, there was a House Bill 1266 that was passed. And basically that enables anybody under parole to be eligible to vote. And so with that as well, we've been able to go to different parole houses and just register those folk as well and inform them on their rights. CCJRC as a whole is a 501c3 nonprofit and nonpartisan organization. It was founded in 1999 by our lead chief executive director, Christy Donner. And we're a small team. We're not, it's just a few board members, and the main team that does the scope of the work is just 6 members. So small, but we've been able to make impact with just a small team. And another big thing about our organization is that every one of us to some extent has been impacted by the criminal justice system. So that kind of lends itself to our passion and why we're so keen on helping people who've been through that, way of life. And we have different programs that or different campaigns that we have alongside the civic engagement program. So the first one is Take Care, Health Matters. And that's basically advocacy for healthcare for justice involved people. That's ran by Terry Hurst, a wonderful woman who's had much experience with the healthcare system. She's dedicated decades to doing that really. And she's still fighting the good fight, so very proud of her for that. The next campaign would be the community reinvestment, and that's overseen by Pamela, and she's basically that program revolves around policy reform and creating cost savings from public safety budgets for investment directly into the communities impacted by the criminal justice system. So, just trying to, as my, manager would put it, following the money, going where that goes so that we can reinvest that into community, making sure that the people who need it most have it. And our C4 side is called CCJRC for Action. And that's a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing electoral and policy strategies aimed at eliminating overuse of the criminal justice system, as well as advancing racial justice in Colorado. So that basically is just promoting prosecutorial accountability and building political power in communities that are mostly impacted by crime, mass incarceration, and mass criminalization. This new organization, well, with a C4 action, was launched in August of 2020. So that's one of our most recent efforts there. It did go dormant during COVID just because of, you know, everything that was going on. But as of this year, we're back with that program. So, you know, we're doing a lot of things and small teams, so it's hard, but we've seen a lot of people, you know, benefit from the work that we've done, whether it's informing the community or passing our palm cards around. Even people who aren't necessarily justice related have been very instrumental in advancing our efforts. Just like I said, you know, those palm cards, we recently renovated them and made a Spanish translated version of those. And so they have been going out and about quite a bit, you know. We're also, we make the Go Guidebooks, which are heavily present in jails. A lot of formerly incarcerated people recognize us from those books, you know, just that helps people and guide them once they're out of jail and how they can vote and see what they're eligible for. But yeah, that's pretty much the scope of our work as of late. Like I said, being the lead canvasser, I've been all over recently. I started in July with them. And so I've been able to meet many, many people, register many, many people. And that's very fulfilling just because a lot of these people, like I said, are unaware, don't even know that they can vote. And that's been a great, powerful moment for me, you know, just to be with these people on a one-to-one and inform them of their rights. But yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Gutierrez. We really appreciate your comments here and your being here. The incarcerated populations are a priority area for the League of Women Voters of Colorado. We agree with you 100%. And we wonder how we might augment your work. How might we help you do what you're doing?
So funny enough, like I've been trying to think outside the box in regards to this, right? And even just from a community standpoint, like recently attended a webinar with my manager. And that webinar was just, it was nationwide, and it's just in regards to basically that, you know, helping people register to vote and different coalitions and whatnot. And a lot of them were brainstorming in regards to how can we get people to actually be interested, because that's oftentimes the barrier, especially with, you know, criminal justice related folk. They're not really interested in, they feel it's, you know, government related, federal related, so they're like, they want to stay away from that. And so I've been just trying to think incentives or how we can make it more fun, if you will, you know, more passionable for these individuals, make, you know, voting fun, I guess, is a big part. So I don't necessarily have any ideas, but really just a big part would be spreading that eligibility piece, which you can find on our website. And those palm cards, like I said, have been instrumental, and we've only had them out for like 2-3 weeks, but they've been getting around quite a bit. And it's, you know, very simple palm card, but the main points as to whether or not they can vote are on there. And so I guess that's one idea off the bat, but I definitely want to, I guess, work further with organizations of all sorts, the League of Women's included, of course, to try and develop ideas, especially before voting season ends.
Great. We have a couple questions, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jeanette?
Welcome to have you, Ruben.
Thank you so much.
The Denver League got its start with your organization to get into the jails here in the Denver county, and it was really great. I do want to just alert not only your agency, and you may know this already, but all the leagues all over the state. The county clerk's office in Denver has created a sheet of paper that has myths and facts, and one of them addresses the incarceration issue. It goes into pretty good detail about it, and it's written in both English and Spanish. And the other issue that it deals with, and if Ann is on here, Ann Duncan will know, I think it's housing. So, you know, but it's available. I can put it on, I can send it to you, Beth, and maybe we can distribute it, you know, around the state. Thank you, Ruben.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for that information.
Eve?
This
Yes,
is
thank
Laura
you.
Stevens here, and along with the rest of the leaguers here tonight and throughout, thank you so much for this work. My question is simply, are you doing any work or getting into the high schools and you know, local colleges, community colleges, tech centers?
So we have attended a few events in the past. We were mainly focusing on like criminal justice related areas, but recently we've been teaming up with ACLU, and we had a
Okay.
meeting, and there was among other organizations like the Latino Coalition,
Sure.
Soul Sisters, so like different organizations, and we were trying to brainstorm and develop sort of a mutually inclusive schedule to try and see if we can maximize efforts together. And part of that involved like going to college campuses or high school, just like I said, to maximize efforts, like not necessarily limit ourselves to one area, and kind of have multi-access reach, you know, especially for the youth, just because youth is a big block of, you know,
Right.
people that aren't voting or aren't necessarily being enabled to do so. So that, you know, it's something we definitely want to step more into going forward.
Great. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Eve?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, first, thank you so much for what you are doing. So many vulnerable people depend on the work that groups like yours do. So
So much.
just, I applaud you, but I do have one question. You talked about House Bill 1266.
Mhm.
And are there any other specifics that we should know about parolees, or if they have the status of parolees, are you saying that at this point they can vote?
That is correct. As far as strictly parolees, once that bill was passed through legislature, and CC Jersey, Christy O'Donnell, our executive, she was very instrumental in helping pass that piece of legislature. And basically, yeah, so anybody who's a parolee can vote, anybody without exception. Obviously just having to be a US citizen, but like aside from that, they're all eligible to vote. And so we've been going to parole meetings, specifically in Aurora. So going to Aurora Parole House, and then there, everybody who goes there, you know, they're all eligible. And most of the times we're actually able to go and register everybody there. Oftentimes they do want to go forward with that. So, but yeah, pretty much everybody under parole can vote.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again for all that you do.
Thank you. You appreciate that.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Gutierrez.
Of course.
Great. I'm Beth Hendricks. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Colorado. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Many of you know that Making Democracy Work Day usually lives up to its name by being held during the day. We mixed it up this year to make way for the Denver Women's March, which was to be held tomorrow morning. And we know that leaguers are born to march. So, but last week, the Denver Women's March announced a postponement until October 8th. So please do not show up at the Capitol tomorrow expecting the Denver Women's March. The morning of the 8th, we will indeed open the office for donuts and sign making at 8 a.m. ahead of the 9 a.m. march, and we will send more information and reminders out to you. But again, the Denver Women's March has been postponed until the 8th. So we will look forward to seeing you then. Now we're going to take a brief break until 6:30 when we will come back and welcome Jonathan McMillan, who's the Executive Director of Colorado's new Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So we'll look forward to seeing you in 15 minutes at 6:30. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Jonathan McMillan, Executive Director of the Colorado Office of Gun Violence Prevention, a new office under the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, created by HB 1299, a bill supported by the League of Women Voters of Colorado. Prior to this role, Mr. McMillan served as the Director of Youth Violence Prevention for the City and County of Denver, the Justice System Involved Student Coordinator at Metropolitan State University of Denver, and the Director of Emerging Adults and Youth Leadership Development for Park Hill Collective Impact. He's also the founder and success strategist of Be Better Than Average training, coaching, and personal development, as well as being an author and speaker. Welcome, Mr. McMillan.
March by thing.
Ah, there we are.
I want to thank the women for supporting the.
I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan, we're having some trouble with your volume.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. My apologies. Technology is never or sometimes not our friend. So again, hey, let me rewind, and I want to begin my comments by just thanking the League of Women Voters Colorado for your support of 1299, which created the Office of Gun Violence Prevention over in Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. As you had mentioned in your introduction, this is a relatively new office. The bill passed and became law in July of 2021. So the office has existed for just over a year now. I have not been in the office that long. I was actually hired on just a few months ago, in the first week of May. So I have hit the ground running, so to speak, to make sure that I am doing everything I can in my power to make sure that we are that the office is meeting and satisfying the requirements of the legislation to the letter. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with, well, if you're not familiar with, I want to share with you what those three mandates are. First and foremost, we're going to create a resource bank that will, excuse me, I'm a little under the weather today, so please bear with me if you hear me coughing or clearing my throat. I apologize. So the resource bank is going to be a repository for data and research and statistical information about all things regarding gun violence in Colorado. But more than that, it's also, in my vision, is going to be a repository for information for not just, say, legislators who are looking for data on the number of gun violent deaths around suicide or the number of gun violence incidents around intimate partner violence. It will also be a place that your typical community member, like you ladies, for example, can go to find out who are the organizations within the state that are doing work around gun violence prevention. Where a teacher, say if they need to have a subject matter expert to come talk to a classroom, they could go to that resource bank and find that information. I'm envisioning it as a Google for gun violence prevention resources that's specialized to Colorado, right? The second mandate of the legislation that exists within my office is creating an awareness and education campaign about, again, I would say all things as it relates to gun violence prevention. As is written in the legislation, it says an awareness campaign to educate about state and federal laws and existing resources relating to gun violence prevention. Honestly, what I'm hoping that education campaign will come to be is more of a a way for us to have a normal conversation about what it means to be a gun owner in Colorado. What does it mean to be what does responsible safe gun ownership look like in Colorado? What are some of the signs that you could look for to make sure that we are doing everything in our ability to respect the rights of the Second Amendment, but also keep people safe, healthy, and hopeful? Are my three aiming words: safe, happy, healthy, and hopeful. Right. Um, I look for the education campaign. I am of the age where I grew up watching Smokey the Bear during my afternoon cartoons or morning at cartoons saying only you can prevent forest fires. Right now, as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old watching cartoons, I wasn't going into the forest and starting forest fires. But here we are 45 years later, that still sticks in my head, in knowing that there's a level of personal responsibility that I have, and I'm empowered to prevent forest fires. I would love for the people of Colorado, both the younger generation to the older generation, to recognize that we all have a role to play in gun violence prevention. So that's what I'm looking for in this education campaign, but also to help raise awareness of what responsible gun ownership looks like through safe storage practices, what responsible gun ownership and community, um, I would say active bystander um, empowerment looks like when with through the extreme risk protection orders, so that we can help people. We can help save our loved ones by being that intervening actor before a violent incident happens. In Colorado, I'm not sure if you know, but almost 7 out of 10 gun-related deaths are suicides. Um, three-fourths of gun incidents in Colorado are suicides. So honestly, with the extreme risk protection orders, as we expand the knowledge of what they are and how to use those, I'm fairly confident, actually really confident, that we will begin to be able to save lives. Then the last piece is the part that I'm most excited about is my grant program. I'm about a hair's breadth away from getting everything finalized to get some money out into the community to those organizations that are boots on the ground, grassroots level, are doing the work around gun violence prevention. Now, I probably should have said this earlier, but I'll interject it now. Uh, the office again is housed in the Colorado Department of Public Health, which means that we are taking a scientific method towards reducing gun violence in Colorado. It's not what traditionally has been done around gun violence is that it's been a law enforcement or a criminal justice issue, right? And law enforcement and criminal justice have their places, and they play a role in reducing gun violence. But to be in public health, we're really looking upstream and looking at what are the risk factors that leads to somebody being impacted or involved in gun violence. What are the what are the protective factors that help people not be impacted or involved in gun violence? And looking across the spectrum of what gun violence looks like: intimate partner violence, suicide attempts and completions, community violence, where we see the things that make the news: gun violence and gang violence and whatnot. What are the issues that what are the things that we can put in place far upstream that will reduce the likelihood that someone will pick up a firearm and harm either themselves or others, right? And really looking at that through a scientific method and model perspective. So with that, with the grant program, I'm really looking at supporting and hopefully helping community organizations that are already doing this work, um, as we speak right now, helping them to strengthen, to be able to do what they do better and longer. So really looking at scaling and improving what they're doing. As you mentioned, Beth, in the introduction, my background is in youth violence prevention. So I've worked with a lot of community organizations that do everything from after school programming to youth leadership development to college tours, everything from here to there and everything in between. That's youth violence prevention, right? That's upstream prevention. It's helping young people get connected to trusted adults. It's helping young people develop skills that will hopefully engage their critical thinking. It's helping them feel connected to something bigger than themselves. It's helping them feel connected to their communities. So I'm looking to again. Support programs like that, organizations like that, but then also support um, organizations that say do domestic violence interventions and supports for survivors and victims of domestic violence. Looking to support our teachers in our schools to make sure that they have what they need to help not only feel safe and secure, but make sure that their students have what they need so that um, they feel empowered and they have the skill set to deal with conflict, even internal self-conflict, to deal with that in a nonviolent manner. So I've said a lot, and I hope I've given you a overview and a thorough overview and comprehensive overview of all the work that I'm managing right now. I'll pause and see if there's any questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. We do have one question from Sandy Schuster. Are you getting cooperation in reporting from all agencies reporting incidents for your statistics?
The short answer is yes. As far as the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, they do a great job of gathering statistical data and being able to analyze that and report that out. And there was already within CDPHE a Department of Suicide Prevention. There is a sub-department within suicide prevention that looks at veterans, which is a very troubling demographic when you look at the number of suicide attempts and completion. We are getting that data and using it to inform not only strategies but also build out the resource bank. Additionally to that, at CU Hampshire's School of Public Health, they have a Center for Injury and Violence Prevention. These are the experts in the field of what it looks like, what gun violence looks like. My background, again, in youth violence prevention, I worked with CU Boulder and the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence. So I feel very confident moving in this role, knowing that I have best of the best of academics in this world who have the information. I can just do an email, pick up the phone, or I could drive down the street to the Anschutz campus, drop in and find out what I need to know as far as data goes, or go to my office, which at CDPHE is a great data clearinghouse.
Great, thank you. Another question, can you talk to us about your education efforts about the safe storage laws, particularly for parents?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, mandate number 2 of the legislation that created the office is an education and awareness campaign. We want to make sure that we are reaching as many people as possible within the state of Colorado to educate them on what, again, I'm umbrelling under responsible gun ownership. Safe storage is a part of that. It's actually a Colorado law. But even more so, I would say it's a personal issue to me because all my years working in youth violence prevention, I used to do direct services working with active and former gang members, and I'm a product of Colorado. I'm a product of Denver. I have seen so many young people lose their lives because they got their hands on a firearm, or somebody else got their hands on a firearm and used that weapon irresponsibly. Just even a couple of years ago, a young man who I had worked closely with, you probably saw it in the news, was killed at the Aurora Mall the day after Christmas. I cannot be more passionate than I am right now about wanting to save lives. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to for people to safely secure their firearms, whether it's a gun lock, whether it's a gun safe, or is some of the more. I do some research every now and then. They have some really technologically advanced locks and weapon, or not weaponry, but mechanisms where you could only the gun owner, the registered gun owner, can fire the firearm. Smart locks, it's incredible. So even with my grant program, I intend to give out money for people to be able to purchase mass amounts of safe storage devices and then pass them out for free for anyone who is interested in obtaining one.
Great. Thank you for that. You've mentioned going upstream to target. How far upstream do you intend to target?
Oh boy.
That's a broad question.
It is a broad question. So if it's up to me, I'm starting kindergarten. My boss, the chief medical officer, he may disagree with me in that, understanding that there's so many complexities that create the risk and risk factors and protective factors that if I go too far upstream, I'm really out of my scope of work, right? My focus really is to be able to recognize and identify and maybe even create, I'm not sure about that, proven strategies or evidence informed strategies, or encourage strategies that may be novel and innovative but don't necessarily have the research behind them, to reduce and prevent gun violence in Colorado. It's a moving target as far as how far upstream. If you go too far upstream, and I hate saying that way, too far upstream, it moves out of the office of, say, suicide prevention or gun violence prevention, or even cancer prevention. It goes to an office of health equity, because that's really what we're talking about when we talk about really far upstream. We're talking about making sure that everybody, regardless of their gender, identity, their skin color, their zip code, whatever it is, has an equal opportunity to be, again, happy, healthy, and hopeful. So, I'm not at that point where I'm in the office of health equity, but I will be working closely with them to identify some of those swim lanes, so to speak.
Great. Thank you. What is your level of staffing?
I have a strong staff of 2 right now. It's myself and my communications director. That being said, I have at my disposal the entire public safety, not public safety, the prevention services division of CDPHE available for me. So, that again, that includes the Office of Suicide Prevention. That includes the Office of, health equity. Again, I have a whole department within CDPHE that focuses on nothing but data. So while the office is small, it's just me and one other person at this time, I'm not overworked quite yet. I will be bringing on at least one other person, probably within the next month or so, to assist me in doing some outreach. And to help me monitor all the contracts for all the money that we give out. Right, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I like to take a break every now and then. So I will be able to manage all of the contracts that I'm looking to create as I manage this grant program, and I will be traveling from one end of the state to the other and back and forth. So I'm going to need a little bit of help with that in the next few weeks here.
Great. What mental health services do you intend to help with in schools or after school programs?
Specifically, my office will not be creating into any mental health specific services or mental wellness services as I label them. But however, I anticipate that there's a ton of whether it's community-based or local jurisdiction-based or school-based programs that are great. They just need a little bit more funding, or they need a little bit more support to be that much better and that much more effective, and to be able to scale their efforts. So, you know, it would not be wise for me to go out and say, hey, I'm creating this mental health program. Let's find the folks who this is what they do and they do it well, and help them do it even better by supporting that work through a grant program. Additionally, Colorado recently created the office, the Behavioral Health Administration. And so I have been meeting with Dr. Morgan Medlock, who is the commissioner of the Behavioral Health Administration, to figure out, how do we collaborate? How do we work closely together to make sure that all of our, again, everyone in Colorado has what they need in order to be happy, healthy, and hopeful. And a lot of times that's preventative mental wellness work, is self-care, is things that are starting to now not be as taboo to talk about, right? We're starting to have conversations about what mental wellness looks like. Again, I want to go back to my background working with youth and youth violence prevention. I always have a youth advisory council. And one of the most profound things that a young person told me about 2 years ago is, you know, from the time that you're in kindergarten to 12th grade, you have a requirement to have X amount of physical education hours, right? That's to make sure that you are learning about the holistic, the physiology of your body, all of these things, have fun, all of those. We need to explore having that same requirement for mental wellness education, because in that regard, from the time of your kindergarten to your 12th grade, you'll begin to destigmatize the conversation about what mental health and mental wellness and mental illness is. You'll be able to recognize in yourself when you are not at your optimal mental wellness. You'll be able to recognize in your peers and your classmates when they are maybe struggling and not at their optimal mental wellness, and you'll know what to do. You'll know what that next step is, whether it's having a conversation one-on-one, or finding that trusted adult to maybe intervene in a chaotic situation or a crisis before it becomes a crisis situation. So I'm looking for any and all ideas around mental wellness and behavioral health to support, to again, you know, minimize and reduce and prevent gun violence as it exists in Colorado.
Great. We're going to do one more question now. We have a number of questions, but in order to stay on track here, we will work with Mr. McMillan's office post-presentation here to get the other questions answered. But last one is, what measures can be taken to have a statewide ban on assault weapons?
You know, that's not a question that is within the scope of work for my office. It actually was written in the legislation that this office would not advise or make recommendations about policy in future legislation. That being said, once the resource bank becomes active, the data I'm sure will help inform what next steps will be for future policy or legislation that should or should not exist.
Great, thank you for that. To those others of you that submitted questions in the chat box that we weren't able to get to, we will connect with Mr. McMillan's office to try to get your questions answered. Sir, we thank you very much for your time and your work. We hope that you will consider the League of Women Voters an ally and partner.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation, and you have a great evening.
Thank you, you too. So The League of Women Voters of Colorado recently launched a statewide task force on gun violence prevention. Its purpose is to promote the collective actions necessary to advance equity and justice in Colorado's systems and policies in the area of gun violence prevention as aligned with League positions. We also have statewide task forces focused on the areas of climate emergency, reproductive justice, alternative voting methods, housing, healthcare, and news access and literacy. Each of these task forces has the same basic mission as the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, but obviously different subject matter. These task forces are open to all who have an interest and a desire to act. League membership is not required. Please watch the LWVCO website calendar for meeting dates, which are always via Zoom. So now on to our next speaker. Power the Polls was launched in June 2020 by a coalition of businesses and nonprofits seeking to recruit a new wave of poll workers ahead of the 2020 election. I'm sure we all remember the coronavirus wreaking havoc and fewer poll workers were signing up for the job. Power the Polls had an original goal of recruiting 250,000 prospective poll workers nationally. In less than 100 days, Power the Polls harnessed the energy of individuals interested in ensuring a fair and safe election, recruiting over 700,000 prospective poll workers across the United States. Our speaker, Ashley Williams, Power the Polls Deputy Program Director since June of 2022. Prior to coming to Power the Polls, Ashley produced and facilitated the largest political organizing training series ever for Organizing Together 2020's partnership with Crooked Media. The first session had 16,000 live viewers on Zoom and YouTube, and the 4-part series had over 122,000 views on YouTube within the year. So, Ashley, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Is it okay if I screen share?
Of course. Let me make sure I have given you that
It looks like
capability.
Yeah,
Great.
looks like I can. Well, thank you all so much for having me. And if you want to see the slides and my face and each other equally, feel free to like drag the little line on your Zoom over so you can see both. But as Beth said, I'm Ashley. I'm the Deputy Program Manager at Power the Polls. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in New York City. I'm going to start my timer so I don't go over. I'm based in New York, where it's a little bit later tonight, but I'm so grateful to you all for having me and for being such great partners already for Power the Polls. So as Beth mentioned, Power the Polls was started in 2020. If you rewind back 2 years, which kind of feels like a lifetime ago at this point, that was pre-vaccine. It was hard to get face masks. And so election administrators all over the country were seeing many of their regular force of poll workers not feeling comfortable or literally not being able to serve in a public place during the primary with hundreds or maybe even thousands of people coming throughout the day. And that led to shortages all over the country during the primaries. One example is in Dallas in 2020, 10 polling locations had to close because they didn't have enough poll workers. And as you all probably know, when things go wrong at the polls, when there's long lines or polling locations close, that most often affects communities of color and low-income communities. And so a bunch of different organizations, including Work Elections, the Center for Secure and Modern Elections, MTV, lots of different organizations came together and created a first of its kind initiative called Power the Polls to recruit a new and more diverse wave of poll workers for the election in 2020. And hopefully for years and years to come, we hope to create lifelong poll workers. And before I dive a little bit into what we do and my ask for all of you tonight, I'd love to know, maybe in the chat box, if any of you have been a poll worker before. So if you have, go ahead, put it. Yeah, I see it one hand. I don't see everyone on the screen. So feel free to put it in the chat, share where you were a poll worker. I know the League of Women Voters does such incredible work on registering voters, but of course those voters need to have a place to go. And so for that, we need poll workers staffing every election. So I'm gonna check the chat. A few people, Kate says it'll be her first year as a poll worker. I love that. So keep sharing in the chat your experience with being a poll worker. So as Beth mentioned, our goal in 2020 was to recruit around 250,000 poll workers. But in the end, we recruited over 750,000 people across the country who said, I will go. I know my normal poll workers are older and it may not be safe for them, and I will go and I will be a poll worker. We didn't do this alone. We had over 400 nonprofit and business partners. So our nonprofit partners range from the AARP to NextGen, who they work to register voters on college campuses. We had business partners like Old Navy and Target and Patagonia. And we also worked with the local elections offices. So we didn't just assume that people needed our help. We actually spent time getting in touch with either the election officials directly or trusted partners in their states that they were already working with to find out the gaps and needs they had on the ground. And what we kept hearing over and over was that their normal wave of poll workers were not going to be able to come that year, but that they also needed folks in general who were comfortable with technology as the tools used at the ballot box are changing, and also folks who speak different languages. So if you're bilingual, you are definitely needed as a poll worker. So poll workers are crucial to our elections. They are nonpartisan, which despite all the things you might be hearing in the news, you may not know, but being a poll worker is strictly nonpartisan and is really a way to serve your community. So poll workers, as I mentioned, help keep polling places open, both on election day and early voting. They make sure the technology is functioning. That's also an issue of accessibility. In some locations, they have different voting machines that are specific for folks who maybe aren't able to use their arms or who need to read Braille or things like that. So poll workers get trained on how to set up those machines and how to work them when someone comes who needs to use them. We all know that long lines causes disenfranchisement of voters. If you have to stand there for hours and you have to go to work or you have children, that is not accessible. So poll workers running a really organized, efficient polling place helps keep those lines shorter. I mentioned the language access, especially if you speak Spanish. That is the number one language we're hearing election administrators need support with. But also my favorite part is that you actually get to help shape a voter's experience. You know, I'm sure we've all been to, whether it's a voting location or just a grocery store or a restaurant, and had a bad customer service experience, and it doesn't make you want to go back, and it makes you, not want to recommend that thing to other people. Voting is the same way, and being a poll worker is a way to provide great customer service to your community and to your neighbors and help them see that voting is fun, it's easy, and getting to hand out those I voted stickers and making someone's day is a lot of fun. So being a poll worker is just a really great way to get involved. And I know all of you are probably doing a lot on registering voters and getting out the vote. And so if you still have capacity to serve on election day, this is another way to kind of get it past the finish line. So Power of the Polls is back in 2022. So yes, we recruited a lot of people in 2020, but the research says it takes about 1 million new poll workers every election cycle to properly staff all the voting locations across the country. So we're back again recruiting more poll workers because we've already seen shortages in the primary elections. There's a few examples on the screen. The states that most often have gaps are kind of the ones you'd expect, places like Georgia and Arizona and Philadelphia, Texas, but also in Colorado, there's still a need for poll workers. So actually, wait, I'm gonna go back. I would love if someone who has been a poll worker would love to like to share. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Would like to share their experience of what you did as a poll worker. I think that would be a lot more useful than me just reading off a slide. So does anyone feel brave and want to share their voice and share your experience as a poll worker? I can just call on someone.
I can. I'm an election judge in hold on, I can't do two things at once anymore.
No.
I really can't. Where's my video? There it is. That's me.
Hi.
I've been active here in Montrose County for I think since 2016 as an election judge. I love it. I like doing it. It's fun. It's exciting. And it feels very, very worthwhile. I had a disagreement because I thought everybody ought to be masked. And so I missed an election or two in there because of that. It wasn't a shared objective, I will say. But what I have learned has been so reassuring with all the doubt and confusion, disinformation, misinformation, and so on about elections, to have experienced how those things happen and how unlikely it is that in normal function that you cannot have confidence in your voting system. And we recently also had Karen Sheik come to this area, to our 3 counties, and do our white paper presentations about that the State League has done in an investigation into, or a study of the Colorado election system, which we are very proud of here. You probably hear that a lot.
And actually I don't, so that's good. Colorado must be doing something
it's
right.
Awesome. It's absolutely awesome, and it's a model for other states. And it was really good to participate in that and help people really understand and feel confident in our system.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jan. So being
I have something to add here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was an election judge. My name's Bobby, and what I found was that all of the seals, the things that they put on each of the pieces of equipment that can't be tampered with, made me very, very aware that we do not. We really, it would be extremely difficult to actually break in and put a flash drive into one of these machines. But my favorite story is a woman who was blind, and she came in and she had her husband with her, and she asked me if I would come into the booth and help her read the ballot. And I said, sure, but your husband's here. Why don't you? Nope. She said, well, he is a different party than I am, and he might vote differently, and I won't know.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, that's it. Yeah. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. Well, those are both 2 really great examples. So I'll just zip through this slide really quickly. So among the things you will do if you sign up to be a poll worker, or if you encourage folks in your networks and your communities to do it, setting up the polling location, checking voters in. These are, the people that you see when you come to vote. But as Bobby mentioned, providing assistance for voters. So every voter has the right to request someone to assist them in voting. Again, this is nonpartisan. You don't get to influence their vote. You can't, fill it out for them unless they physically are not able to. But if accessibility is an important issue for you, then being a poll worker is a great opportunity. In states that have same-day registration, you would help register people. You would deal with any disagreements, whether it's around masking or, who gets to be in the polling place. You may do a bit of that, but there's also supervisors there to go to who will handle any situation that a poll worker doesn't feel comfortable with. Of course, if your state has them, you hand out I voted stickers. And then at the end of the night, you'll help break down the polling location. And depending on the procedures locally, you may also help with making sure the ballots get moved to wherever they have to go to be counted. So briefly, how to become a poll worker. We'd love for you to sign up at powerthepolls.org/LWV for League of Women Voters. So one of the reasons Power the Polls was created is because a lot of the elections websites are a little like outdated and hard to use. So we try to streamline them or streamline the information. So we will direct you to the correct jurisdiction to complete your official application. Then it's in the hands of your election administrator. They will reach out to you. If you speak another language, they will probably call you first. Then you'll go through your official training where you'll learn all the ins and outs and all the rules. And then, of course, show up either for early voting or on election day. And it is a pretty long day, but it sounds like it's pretty worth it. Quickly, the rules vary everywhere. So if you have people you're talking to outside of Colorado, tell them to check locally what the laws are. But in many places, you can be a poll worker if you're under 18. So in Colorado, if you're at least 16 years old, you are able to serve as a poll worker. Most poll workers are across the country are paid. So that's also a great way for folks to make a little extra money, or for students to get some community service credits or to build up their resume. So in conclusion, the League of Women Voters are already incredible partners of Power the Poll. So I don't need to ask you all to do that, but if you're parts of other organizations, we would love to partner with you as well. And my big ask for all of you is, if you are not already committed to some other wonderful volunteer activity on election day, to sign up to be a poll worker. Again, you can go to the powerthepolls.org/LWV. You can invite your friends to sign up. And if you run a business or work in maybe HR or operations at a company, talk to your company about providing paid time off so that more people at your company can serve as a poll worker. That's something we saw be really, really successful in 2020. So I'll stop there, and I want to be mindful of time, but Beth, let me know if we have time for questions. If not, I will pass it back to you.
No, we can definitely take a couple questions if folks have any. This is obviously an area in which we have some knowledge.
Yes, I am sure.
So.
And as Maud mentioned, yeah, so poll workers in Colorado are called election judges, so you don't actually have to be a judge. Is it too late to sign up for November? No, it's not. So now is the great time. Elections officials are going through their lists of people now. So they'll be making decisions in the next couple of weeks about staffing polling locations. I see. Sandy, did you have a question?
Yeah, one of the things that I found was, as I'm getting older, it's a very long day. Most places dividing it in half. I think they started that in Colorado, but I don't know for sure.
So I will defer to the folks who are there locally about what's happening in Colorado, but I know in most places it is a full day. I defer to other folks on what's happening there.
Does anybody know?
Yeah, well, in Montrose County, they do split them. So they use a lot of us. I think on election day, there are some of the judges who are there throughout the day, but up until then, it's usually in about 4-hour shifts.
Oh, that's good.
Good
Probably
question.
more like 5 hours.
Yeah. Jeanette, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I was going to comment 2 things, that in Denver, they are looking for many more election judges, and they pay very well. They train people, and also you don't work just on election day, because they have for 3 weeks, they have people who are collecting the ballots. They're preparing them for being processed. They will do signature, looking at the signatures to make sure they match. It can be a long, it's a great stopgap job for somebody who wants a part-time job.
Yeah, I think they do like a 2-week stint or something like that, don't they? Or
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think they do a half day, because I think someone in my unit does a half day.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing that collective knowledge. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful. And again, I hope you all sign up to be poll workers, but also please ask the folks in your life, especially folks under 18 who want to be involved but can't vote. This is a really great way for them to contribute to democracy as well.
I have one more question. Weren't you the group that did some posters like My Voice is My Vote and put them in Spanish as well as in English?
We didn't have ones
With a
that said
media.
that.
You worked with a media project, it seems to me.
We worked with a bunch of media projects. So yeah, we had a lot of different like graphics. So I'm not sure. I don't think we had one that said that, but we definitely had graphics in Spanish. And that's something we can also, like, if you all are interested, we have a toolkit with tons of graphics. If you want to amplify things on social media, we can share that with you all.
That was really wonderful. Somebody in our group found those posters and made them, and we took them to the voting registration events. And I saw somebody the other day taking a photograph with her, cell phone of one of the posters. So it was really great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, Beth, is it time for me to jump in?
It is. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are going to get to a little bit of a discussion on the legislation.
Oh, we just lost you.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I was just wanting to mention that we're going to shift over to some information on the Legislative Action Committee. But before I do that, I do want to extend a big thank you to Ashley for the information that she's provided tonight. Very useful, lots of practical tips, and very inspiring. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I've got a few slides just to walk us through the information that I want to share with you all. Oops. Just one second. Okay, I'm hoping that you can all see my screen okay. If you can't, or if there's technical details or problems that I don't know about, please just yell out at me. But as I mentioned, I do want to provide just kind of an overview of the role and function of the State League Legislative Action Committee, or LAC as we refer to it. And I'm just giving you all a sense. I know there are many people on the call that either currently or have participated in LAC in the past. And then some people who may not be as familiar. So I first and foremost want to say that everyone, all league members are welcome. So if you have any interest whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Maud, or Kathy with any questions or information that you might need to get geared up for participating in the 2023 session. For those that are not familiar, the LAC is the State League's core of citizen lobbyists, and we typically have somewhere in the range of maybe 20 to 25 people that serve in this capacity from one year to the next. Experience on the LAC runs the gamut from brand new people who, there's always new people every year that are, just brand new to the experience and are eager to jump in and learn. And then we've got people that have been participating for many years and really everything in between. So it's a really great blend because, we've got that new, fresh perspective that brings a lot of enthusiasm. We've got institutional knowledge. We've got people with really deep subject matter expertise. So it's just a really wonderful experience. And the LAC is a huge, huge asset for the league and the work that we do as an organization. So getting to a little more about what that work actually looks like. LAC lobbyists, monitor legislation that's coming out of the General Assembly that deals with our organizational priorities and our positions. We will actively lobby on things that we feel strongly about, legislation that we are either very much in support of or legislation that we feel is really detrimental. And we want to make our perspective known on that. So we do closely monitor, many bills over the course of a session. LAC typically follows around 100 pieces of legislation. I say that to just kind of illustrate the scope of what the group as a whole does. I don't say it to scare anyone off. You really can kind of pick to set your workload wherever you want it to be as an LAC lobbyist. If you want to observe, if you want to follow one bill, if you want to follow 10 bills, it's really up to you kind of to kind of customize that experience, and we welcome all levels of contribution. The LAC meets on a bi-weekly basis during the legislative session, which runs from January until mid-May. We do always have a Zoom option. Over the past couple of years with COVID, we've been exclusively Zoom. Historically, we've been an in-person group, but we will always have a Zoom option. That's been really valuable for us as a statewide organization to really pull in more participation from more diverse parts of the state, which has been fabulous. And so we certainly want to see that continue. Our meetings are really focused on discussing the legislation that we're following. We kind of discuss the ins and outs of it, how it impacts our positions first and foremost. We do not follow things that we don't have a position on, similar to kind of what we were talking about with the ballot issue discussion. If there's no position, we don't spend our time there. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about how legislation that is a priority for us, how that impacts our positions either positively or negatively. We will vote on the policy stance that we think we need to assign to a bill. LAC lobbyists will then communicate our policy positions and perspectives to policymakers, and we very frequently provide testimony before legislative committees to really get that perspective and impact on individual communities, kind of is, trying to illustrate how that plays out from our various, experience in our own communities, really get that communicated to legislators on the committees. The State League very much encourages participation in the LAC from all of our local leagues. Ultimately, our goal is to see representation from every local league in the state on the LAC. Our lobbying perspective, our advocacy approach is just really enriched by having, a diversity of experience, perspective, difference in community experience, whether that's rural, urban, suburban, whatever the case may be. We know that legislation has different impacts and plays out differently in one part of Colorado to another. And that's a really valuable thing that we can bring to the table as policymakers are considering how legislation is going to impact people in Colorado as they try to avoid unintended consequences and that sort of thing. The broader our perspective is, the more informed we can help them be in the approach that they take. So if you're at all interested, again, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can get you connected with the group and on the road to being an LAC lobbyist. And I do also want to point out that anyone can monitor the work of the LAC. We post a full list of the legislation that we are following during the legislative session on the legislative report page of the State League website. It updates in real time, so just know that that is a resource that's available to you all. All right, on this slide here, you will see a list of all of the different policy areas that we focus on. And you can see that, the different categories that LAC works within and that we lobby on is aligned with our policy positions as an organization. Some areas have got a lot of coverage, others not so much. We try and implement a team approach whenever we can. We think that, it's really, I think, for one, probably more fun if you're working as a group. The LAC is a social activity in addition to serving a really important function for democracy. But we do try and assign more than one LAC lobbyist to an issue area wherever possible. It's not always possible, and if you end up working individually, or if that happens to be the style that you prefer, that is perfectly okay too. But we do want to be mindful of the fact that you all have very busy schedules. Scheduling and getting to the various hearings and all of that can be a challenge. So a team approach can really kind of diversify the deliberation that we have as a group over a particular piece of legislation, and it just allows for more coverage because we have backups and that sort of thing. So I want to point out that in a few areas, such as voting in elections, natural resources, the environment, and housing, we've got really active teams, but in almost every other area, we could use more coverage. And it's not to say that you can't, if those 3 areas, you know, where we do have really strong and active teams are the area that you're passionate about, you are certainly more than welcome to join the teams in that area and, you know, dive in. But I do want to flag the fact that we really could use more coverage in many of our other areas because, as you all know, our positions span a broad range of topics, and our impact can be very large if we've got capacity to really kind of address the full scope of our position. So that's something that, you know, we really want to emphasize. If you see anything on this list that you've got experience in it or an interest in, please consider joining us and following legislation in that area. We would really love to expand our capacity in that way. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an overview about the LAC. Please know that myself, Maud, Kathy, we are available to schedule a call, hop on Zoom, even potentially meet in person if the logistics work, if you wanted to, you know, kind of get a more in-depth look at the components of being an LAC lobbyist. So please know that that is an option. But for now, I want to turn to a bit of a legislative look ahead and talk a little bit about, you know, some of the things that we are anticipating coming down the pike as we look to the start of the next legislative session. One of the key pieces of legislation that the LAC will be very focused on during the 2023 session is the anticipated referred measure that will aim to enshrine the Reproductive Health Equity Act into the Colorado Constitution. We're also monitoring and looking out for the development of additional legislation under this topic area that we understand is aimed at providing more provider protections, more protections for those seeking abortion, and really kind of aiming to kind of build off of the governor's executive order directing the state's departments and agencies to protect reproductive rights in Colorado. So we're very interested in, you know, any activity in this area. I think, as many of you know, last year's Reproductive Health Equity Act codified the right of individuals to access the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion, into Colorado statute, which is fantastic. But we want to see that go a bit further. We want to see this right enshrined in Constitution, because as we know from our ballot issues discussion, you know, things that statutory changes can be changed by a future General Assembly. We know that there is strong support for reproductive freedom and reproductive justice in Colorado. And so we want to see the Constitution speak to the will of the people and the voters in Colorado. So we want to see that protection, you know, enshrined in the Constitution. So we are looking out for that referred measure that'll place a ballot question on the ballot in 2024, asking voters to approve this constitutional amendment, protecting that right within the state. I also want to mention, you know, some anticipated activity around environment and climate. This is an area that, you know, has seen a lot of activity over the last couple of years. I would say probably especially last year, maybe in part because it's, you know, one of the recent sessions that wasn't severely impacted in terms of having a pause on the session and that sort of thing, severely impacted by COVID. So we did see a lot of really positive legislation come out in the environment and climate realm last year, and we do expect that trend to continue. We're really pleased with the focus and the priority level that the climate crisis has received from many within the General Assembly. So we're really looking to, you know, be strong advocates for additional measures that come out there. And as I mentioned, we have a very active team. Many on the call know that, you know, we're extremely active on this issue year round, both through our legislative action team, but also, of course, our climate emergency task force. So this is a really important issue for us that we anticipate being very active on in the 2023 session. We're also anticipating activity around gun safety, another important issue, obviously a big topic for tonight's conversation, but we are looking out for legislation around ghost guns. There's been a lot of talk within the community about that over the last couple of years. We know from our task force meeting a little earlier in the week, that focus has continued, and we do expect some legislation in that area, as well as some efforts to raise the minimum age for the purchase of assault weapons. And then I want to mention that several of the interim committees have made their bill draft requests for legislation that they are seriously considering, and narrowing down their choices for bills that they want to recommend be introduced during the 2023 session. Not all committees have got those out yet, but many do, including areas that cross over and impact our organizational positions. We've seen legislation recommendations or bill drafts come from the Colorado Youth Advisory Committee, the Oversight Committee on Tax Policy, the Transportation Legislation Review Committee, Water Resources and Agriculture Committee, and the Wildfire Matters Review Committee. So a lot of areas that are of interest to us. You can access the bill drafts on the interim committee pages if that's something that interests you. And I also want to mention that the Legislative Council Committee will be reviewing the recommended legislation during a hearing coming up on October 14th. And that is accessible to you all either in person if you're inclined to want to be there in person, or you can also monitor and listen in on the hearing via the audio that can be found on the committee page. And then lastly, I want to say a little bit about the recent September revenue forecast that was presented to the JBC just yesterday. Probably not surprising to anyone, given all we hear in the news and some of the concerns that we're kind of living out in real time right now. There are overarching concerns about the impact of inflation, and the concern about sort of a growing potential for a recession, and really what kind of impact that's going to have on the state budget over the next fiscal year. It is anticipated, at least at this point, through some of the more outlying projections, that negative impacts are expected to be fairly short-lived, with the economic outlook appearing pretty positive through the early projections that have been made for late 2023 and 2024. The fiscal year 2022 to 23 revenue collections are expected to slightly surpass fiscal year 21-22. And the General Assembly is expected to have around $1 billion more available to spend or save compared to what's currently budgeted. However, it is really important to note that most of that amount will be dedicated to existing spending plans. So, every year the LAC pays attention to kind of the pot of money that is available for new programs and initiatives. And this year that amount is estimated to be around $85 million. Also, the governor's proposed budget is expected November 1st. So that's something else that we will be looking out for during the interim. And then the session itself gets underway on January 9th. So it will certainly be here before we know it. That's kind of a quick overview. And please let me know if there are any questions. Either, I know we're a little short on time tonight, but I'm happy to follow up with anyone and talk further if there are any questions.
One question, Andrea.
Uh-huh.
Will you please explain what the Legislative Council is?
Okay, so the Legislative Council Committee is a committee that is made up of legislative leadership that comes together for a lot of kind of the big picture stuff, some of the governance issues for the legislature, and in this case, the hearing that I referenced on the 14th. Certainly of interest to those of us in LAC, but also I think of broader interest for the league more generally is the hearing on the 14th will be dedicated to a discussion around the recommended legislation. So the interim committees are allowed to recommend a certain number of bills that can be introduced. those recommendations will give you a pretty good sense of some important things that can be coming down the pike. So particularly in the interim committees where there is a lot of impact to our organizational positions, we like to pay attention to the activity there and the legislation that is being recommended by those committees. And so that discussion will take place within the Legislative Council Committee on the 14th.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. Appreciate it. The Legislative Action Committee is the heart and soul of LWVCO, and your leadership and expertise, Andrea, is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank all of our speakers tonight. Maud Narol, Kathy Wilson, Ruben Gutierrez, Jonathan McMillan, and Ashley Williams. I also want to let you know that we will be distributing our ballot issues toolkit on September 30th, 1 week from today. We had hoped to get the pamphlets back from the printer prior to that, but we did receive word today that it will be on the 30th. The ballot issues toolkit will include pamphlets in both English and Spanish, ballot issues text suitable for websites and social media in English and Spanish, videos of each ballot issue in English and Spanish, infographics of each ballot issue in English and Spanish, and a PowerPoint for presentations and an accompanying speech. Thanks always to our researchers, writers, and creators who helped. Maud, Kathy, Tony, Jerry, Andrea, Jerry, Natasha, Bobby, and I'm sure I'm missing a few, for which I apologize. Another big thank you to the Rudy and Alice Ramsey Foundation, which provided generous funding for the ballot issues toolkit. I'd also like to thank Chris Humphreys and Barbara Winnery, LWVCO co-directors of voter service, who were instrumental in creating tonight's agenda, and Hannah Pogue, our operations manager, who's our all-around glue for keeping things together. A recording of tonight's presentation will be available on LWVCO's YouTube channel early next week, and we will share it, as well as some other resources from our speakers, with all attendees. I hope you have a wonderful evening, a gorgeous weekend, and please remember to encourage everyone you know to vote. Thank you very much.
Andrea, Kathy, Beth, if you have any energy left, do you want to stay on for half a sec afterwards?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Jan. She said, did I hear pamphlets will mail on the 30th? My denial kicked in. We have a request to present on the 1st. But we should be able, we probably can get Jan the